A link in the description for cheap games. The news that Titanfall 2 was being developed was music to a lot of people's ears. The first game was great, it just lacked some important aspects like customization and unlocks. The second game hopes to address those issues, and I got a chance to play it at EA Play last week, so I wanted to take you through my early thoughts on what's good and what's bad from what I experienced. First things first, visually not much has changed. It's still running on the source engine of sorts. The first game started with the source engine, but then they replaced the audio, the renderer, the netcode, added their own scripting system, and with the second game they've simply built upon that. So while it's true it was initially based on source, it's now something different entirely. It's its own beast. Visually, it's definitely a slight improvement on the original though. The lighting, for example, is much better and the textures seem more detailed than the first time around. Animations were also much improved. In fact, the animations for getting in and out of the Titans and the takedowns were very well done and really added to the immersion. Don't get me wrong, they were cool in the first game, but this time they just felt a lot smoother. It was all contextual depending on what angle you came at your Titan, and they were all very flashy indeed. The domination style map that I played on honestly looked very similar to a Titanfall 1 map. The buildings and the way the map flowed was almost identical, and if it wasn't for the new Titan abilities and the grappling hook, which we'll get onto in a second, I could have been fooled into thinking I was playing maybe a Titanfall 1 expansion. Even still, that doesn't have to be a negative, it can also be something very good. After all, I thought the first game was great, so why reinvent the wheel? I'd say the general consensus was that people wanted more options, more customization, more freedom to unlock things, and more progression. So if you can add all that together and combine it with the gameplay that was already solid, that's got to be a good thing. Okay, so let's talk about that grappling hook, and in my experience, if you add a grappling hook to a game, it just gets better. If you saw the gameplay trailer during E3, you'll have seen the grappling hook at the end of the video. You know the bit where he's in midair and grapples the enemy player in front of him and then glides towards him before kicking him in the face? That one. Well, the grappling hook is one gadget that you'll have access to in Titanfall 2. It also really enhances the already solid movement. You can still wall run and build up speed moving around the level like you could in the original, but now you've got access to this grappling hook that you can use to swing around corners, get to hard to reach places, or, as it would seem, latch onto enemies or Titans in midair. Why not? I played around with it a bit and it was very fluid and natural to use. It did definitely improve the movement in the game, which felt similar to the first one. There is another new mechanic though, the slide. You can now hit control or crouch while running to engage a slide, which gives you a small speed boost on the ground. Very similar, of course, to the same mechanic that's been in the COD series for the last few games. Now, while the grappling hook is available, it's not given to everyone, and this is a big change in the game design. It's based on which pilot class you choose. This time, each pilot that you pick has certain abilities. In the first game, you could either create a custom class or pick from a preset, rifleman, CQB, etc. It wasn't a class really though, as you could change up the abilities and weapons as you saw fit. This time around, there are specific pilots for you to choose from, and depending on which one you choose, you get different abilities. There was space for 6 different pilots here, but only 3 were unlocked in the build that I played. One pilot gave you the grappling hook, another a pulse blade, which I didn't try out when I was playing, but I do know that it sends out a sonar pulse that's kind of like a wall hack. And then lastly, we've got the holo pilot. You can see this in the trailer when the pilot throws up a hologram where his last position was to trick enemy players. This time around, it looks like each pilot is going to offer you something very different depending on your playstyle, and the same could be said of the new Titans, and they're kind of more like heroes in Titanfall 2. From what I could tell, there are 6 new Titans at your disposal, so way more choice compared to the first 3 that were initially offered in the game. Some of them are also pretty damn cool. Remember that sword-wielding Titan that we saw from the early teaser? Well, that's called the Ronin. He kind of resembles the Strider Titan from the first game, only he now has a giant sword because I guess it's just cool. The other two that we know of so far are Ion and Scorch. Ion has a rapid fire energy rifle called the Splitter, and Scorch has a thermite launcher firing off thermite projectiles. They'll also have different abilities. For instance, Ion has tripwires and a vortex shield like in the first game, but Scorch has incendiary traps which are similar, and a heat shield which liquefies incoming artillery fire. So already, if you've been paying attention, you can probably tell by now that there's a lot more depth and choice in this game, and you can definitely pick a playstyle that suits you with both your pilot and your Titan. What about weapons though? There wasn't really that many in the first game, and that was a real issue. Well, the developers have said that there will definitely be more weapons in the sequel, and some of the old ones will be returning as well. Please no smart pistol, please no smart pistol. It's going to be the smart pistol, isn't it? Either way, let's hope there's a much larger pool of weaponry to choose from. A few other things here that I found out from the devs I thought you guys might like to know. We're going to have dedicated servers. They're making a return. Also, the player count will vary based on the game mode, so 5v5 up to 8v8, which is different from the first game, which was limited to 6v6. No word on what game mode will use the larger player counts, but I think that's pretty interesting. AI is still in the game. I know a lot of people didn't like that. Also, clan support will be provided, but I'm not entirely sure what that will entail just yet. And also, the big one here, all modes and DLC will be given out for free. No season pass here. If you buy the game, you'll get all the new content completely free. That's top banana in my book. More companies really need to adopt this DLC model and get with the times. And on top of this, there's also a single player campaign in the new game. Remember the way that they went about telling a story in the first game? It was sort of a multiplayer game mode mixed with small cutscenes. It was just a bit odd really, and didn't serve too well as a way to tell the story of the lore behind the game. This time though, we're getting a full story campaign, and from what I saw, it looked really good. The trailer certainly piqued my interest. It looks like it's really going into the story of the connection between a pilot and his mech 2, pulling at the emotional human-robot heartstrings, kind of like Dog in Half-Life, I suppose. Respawn have always done good campaigns before when those developers were on COD, so I'm very interested to see what they come up with. In conclusion, I think if you like the first Titanfall, you'll probably like the new game too. The movement is extremely similar with a few new additions, but the core of the gameplay remains the same. Visually, it's definitely updated, but it's still got the same look and feel of the first game. The gunplay was solid as you would expect, and the Titan play was extremely similar, but with some new Titan toys thrown in as well. From initial impressions, the game promises way more customizations and unlocks than the first one, so hopefully we get to see some more of that over the next few months. And a look at some of the new game modes, because a lack of game modes at launch of Titanfall 1 really hurt the first game, and I think within a week most people were done with it. Titanfall 2 is coming out in October this year on PC, Xbox One and PS4 this time, no longer Xbox exclusive, but there is going to be a beta for us to get stuck into in the summer to really see what we think of the game. And that's all for today, folks. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, a thumbs down, and I'll see you in the next